Right, so one of the most important parts of an operational war board game is the map. So in the first box of Great Marches of the American Revolution, there's going to be two maps that the campaigns are going to take place on. The primary campaign of Howe's March on Philadelphia in 1777 will be the map that you see here on this vassal module. Each hex in both maps is roughly 1 mile to a mile and a half. Both maps are also going to have the same type of terrain that impacts how things operate. And also, both maps will connect. So you'll see at the bottom of this map is the Delaware River that goes along over to Philadelphia. And at Philadelphia, roughly, maybe over one hex line, it will overlap with the map that simulates the 1778 and 1776 campaign. So you can see Philadelphia here on the left side of this map was on the right side of the other map, and they'll line up right along the Delaware River. So this is about how much of an overhang that you'll have hanging down. So they don't line perfectly up, but they do line up to where if there's possible what-if scenarios in the future, people could try to do those or have massive campaigns with both maps. Now in the first box, all three campaigns will operate by themselves. They don't overlap in any way like that, and all of them will be one map campaigns. So taking a little bit closer look at the map, keeping in mind that these are, like I said, 1 mile to a mile and a half hexes. Let's see what terrain is involved. So the first thing you have is clear terrain, which is what you see here. You also have wooded terrain or woods. You'll have these trails and main roads. Both of them operate in the same way, except if you stay on a main road, meaning you start your movement on a main road and finish on the main road, then you get a +1 movement point by staying on those black roads. That does create quite the advantage if you're able to do it over a long period of time. You also have these towns, such as Goshen and Paoli. Right now on this playtest map, there's no difference in the sizes of those. So I'll zoom out here a little bit, and you'll see, obviously, Philadelphia was a little bit bigger than Germantown. Germantown is just a suburb of Philadelphia now. At the time, it was a separate little town, but it wasn't the same size as Philadelphia. But for sakes of the playtest map, it's just shown by a dot on the map. We'll see what happens when a professional artist gets a hold of this. This first map has something that the other map does not. This faint yellow line is the Delaware and Pennsylvania state line. And then going back to the terrain effects chart to see what other types of things are on the map. These little red dots are continental supply sources that the British can destroy, or the Continentals can use to help them get supply or evacuate them. They are all historically accurate. There will be some on the Monmouth campaign map, the other map that's not on the screen right now, that will just say Buckingham County Farms. Those are ones that I could not find the exact name for, but historical sources talked about how it was a huge area of farmland, so I sprinkled in farmland in that way. When you see Wilcox Paper or Newland Mill, where there's very specific names on there, that means I found a historical source that told me roughly in that area that's where this was located. You also see small things like here where my cursor is, Seven Stars Tavern. That was a tavern that was mentioned in sources or in books that I read on the campaign. Doesn't really play any impact on the campaign itself, just gives you some things for narrative. So now going to the hex sides. Most of them are waterways. You have creeks, minor rivers, which are just basically larger creeks. Brandywine Creek had different areas that it was harder to cross than, say, when you get to the fords and it starts to thin out. Then you have the fords, which are brown crossings and black crossings of the creeks. And then lastly, you have the slopes. Slopes, I know, is a weird thing to include in an operational level game. It gives it a little bit of a grand tactical feel when you get into engagements or where you're conducting combat. That is just where, looking at maps where it starts to get into rolling hills and stuff of that sort. That's how I put that into the map. This area around the North Valley Hills and the South Valley Hills has a big part in the story of Howe's March on Philadelphia that comes after the Brandywine, where there's also almost a massive engagement. Washington is initiating contact with the British, and a torrential downpour over across a couple of days keeps another engagement from happening just days later. So that's a quick introduction to the map. This is part 2. Part 3 of my overview of Great Marches of the American Revolution will dive into the components and then how I organize the order of battle. Thanks for watching.